And so if you're more focused on building people to be the best version of themselves, even if they leave, they can become big support in through other businesses, through other people they refer in. And you now have a reputation that the top people are going to want to work with you.
Hello, and welcome to the Influence and Growth Mastery podcast, where high-performing CEOs and entrepreneurs learn to scale smarter. I'm Tonya Gossage, founder of Gossage Consulting and the Power Connectors. Right here, every week, you're going to discover the real strategies in referral marketing, authority building, and AI-powered automation to help you attract high-ticket leads and grow through smart connections, not cold outreach. Every CEO wants growth, but not every business is built to handle it. We chase revenue, we hire faster, we scale systems, but beneath it all, there's questions that every leaders ask. And that is, can your business hold its own when everything starts to shake? My guest today is Lee Walker. Lee is a business strategist with a master's in business psychology, SHRM CM, and Six Sigma certifications. He has a track record of empowering over 300 small business owners through accounting, fractional CFO, and CHRO services. He combines strategic insight with human-centered approach to drive talent strategy, leadership development, and operational excellence. His career spans industries like financial services, hospitality, travel, and sports, where he developed a sharp eye for business systems and the impact of leadership, for better or for worse. After building a network of entrepreneurs during COVID, Lee chose to focus on small business growth over corporate consulting. Today, he uses his background and profit acceleration software to deliver practical, high-impact solutions to growth-minded businesses around the world. From scaling an accounting firm from 10 to 50 employees and tripling clients in 3 years to building a cross-cultural creative networks, Lee helps business owners grow with purpose and precision. Lee, welcome to the show. You have done a lot in your career.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, it's been really rewarding to help so many people, and thanks for having me on your show.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. So, Lee, let's talk about most CEOs focus on revenue growth, but they ignore the operational background that makes scaling sustainable. And you, I believe, have cracked the code on how to build people-first systems that actually accelerate profit rather than drain it. So one of the things that I want to talk about today is how you have helped scale an accounting firm from not just 10, which is actually quite a few for an accounting firm, but to 50 employees while tripling their client base. So what's the fundamental mindset shift that CEOs have to make about their people operations?
So the fundamental shift is your people are your biggest asset. When you make their job easier in every way you can, you're going to help them to be more effective, more efficient, and more capable with the clients that you want to serve. Now, that's similar to the book title I put out a little bit ago, People plus Process equals Profit. Because if you ignore that fundamental aspect there, you're not going to succeed. And when you have people that aren't happy, aren't excited, aren't motivated well, the results you're going to see aren't the same as what they could be when you do really prepare them for that success and focus on, instead of how can I get more out of them, you focus on what can I do to take problems off of their plate to help them be the best version of themselves, and then help me through that become the best version of myself.
Ooh, I love that. So I want to talk about your book here in just a little bit, but how do you help leaders see their people strategy as a revenue driver rather than a cost center?
Yeah, so this is actually a conversation I've had with a few other thought leaders recently, and talking about with CFOs, they're considered the purse of the company. And the people side of it is, as you said, considered more of a cost center. But the reality is, if you have 3 mediocre employees versus 3 amazing employees that you're consistently feeding, then you're talking about having scales of economy. And with that scale of economy, because you're supporting them, because you do have effective amounts in them that you can take away, you can have improvements. Now, one thing that I've been talking to business owners recently about is, how do you motivate innovation? And the usual question is, what do you mean? So by motivating innovation, I mean, to what degree are you actually using incentive systems for your employees to make things better and easier? Because what most companies do, when you say, hey, we've made this a new efficiency, great, now you have more work to do, but your pay doesn't increase. So you're actually disincentivizing your team to make things better because you don't pay them. In fact, you're actually almost punishing them for doing things better. It's like, and that happens, you see, with a lot of the A players in companies, is they're going to stop doing things because if they're not rewarded appropriately, they're not recognized appropriately, they're not incentivized appropriately, you're actually incentivizing bad behaviors. I know there was times where in other companies where I did do above and beyond, and I was still paid like the person that did half the amount of work as me. And when I would bring that up, they're like, oh, well, in another year, maybe we can look at this. And that's not a real response. That is not, especially if you're a small business, that is not allowed. I'll say it is allowed. I want you to consider it not allowed, because that is the attitude you're instilling in the people below you. Is, it doesn't really matter what you do. It's going to be on my decision. But if you instead do things like, hey, any idea you give, if this, say, increases efficiency by 10%, increases our profits by 10%, you see 10% of that increase, as long as it's sustainable over 6 months or so, and there are no ethical problems where it like harms your client base, you're going to see a lot more innovation. You're just going to see the business grow and grow and grow. Your employees are going to be happier and everything goes up. But when you don't do things like that, I don't know about you, Tonya, if you were essentially punished, given more work for doing well and not compensated for it, would you continue to do that? I think people have 1, 2, maybe 3 strikes before they're like, not really worth it. And they lose all motivation for it.
Yeah, so this could really, start some good conversation here. I worked in corporate for 34 years, and I don't know if you ever heard these words, do more with less. Have you ever heard that? Oh my goodness. Yes. Do more with less. And, it's unfortunate that, it's so unfortunate that people have to, and I say have to, they don't have to, they end up choosing to because they think there's nowhere else to go. And they feel forced to work with that. But I love your thought around how innovation works. And you're right, because when people feel respected and they feel like their voice means something, they feel taken care of, then they become better workers. They give you a lot more. They enjoy coming to work. But, I will tell you, Lee, that again, this can get real controversy, especially for people who listen to my podcast. We may get some real interesting comments here on this podcast today. But, I, in my career, did a lot of work for a 10-cent raise. And then it was like what you said, we'll look at this again in a year, 10-cent quarters. It was a long time really proving myself before I saw the great rewards. The great rewards eventually came, but it took a long time. So in my business today, I love what you're doing, by the way. I love what you're doing. In my business today, it's different because I've been there and I know what people want. I've heard it for years. I know what they want. I've seen them work. And I've listened to them that, we would be better employees if we would do more if I don't feel appreciated because. And so I treat my employees different today. In my business today, it's family first. It's not business first. It's family first. And then when they help me grow my business, raises come fast. They don't come slow. And so, I have people that have been here less than a year and I've already had 2 raises. So, I take care of my people. When they take care of me, I take care of them. And I wish it was that way everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's dig deeper into what you do. I love this. We may get a lot of reviews, who knows, and a lot of great comments as well. So let's walk through your people advisory framework. Which of the pillars do most CEOs actually get wrong? I would love to be on your bandwagon to change this world, honestly, because it's so needed. People could grow faster. But what's the cost of the mistake for the pillar that CEOs get wrong?
That's a difficult question to answer. I think, me and a lot of people in the industry talk about the culture as being, one of the key part of this. And what I would say is the mindset. And that's not actually part of the framework. It is what the framework lives in. And so to take it back another step is, a good friend of mine, he does an entirely people advisory company. And he talks about this all the time is when you have a really good tool set, skill set, and mindset, you have a great asset. And so the mindset.
Say that one more time. I need to write that down. Say that one more time.
So when you have a great tool set, skill set, and mindset, you can then have a great asset.
Oh, love it.
What the framework aims to do is within that overall idea is building that mindset, that skill set, and that tool set, and through different various aspects. Now, I've created a flywheel because these are all interconnected. And so the employee life cycle is simplified as attract, develop, retain. And I broke those into 6 columns, as you mentioned. And so under attract, we have recruit and onboard. Develop is training and performance. And then retain is retention practices and legal practices. So where I'd say is that there isn't one specific aspect that employers aren't doing unless you're talking about the mindset. And if you talk about the mindset from the lens of James Clear's Atomic Habits, which I often use when I was actually selling people advisory services rather than the profit acceleration system I do now, we'll take that out. It's not that I do sell the profit acceleration system. I use that as part of my coaching. But that mindset is really waking up and making that part of you, part of your identity. And many, many, many of us have many identities. Tonya, you've got mother, probably sister, wife, coach, an AI expert, and all these identities we wake up and subconsciously think about every day. And we're like, okay, I'm going to be a great mom today. I'm going to be a great partner. I'm going to be a great dad. I'm going to be a great consultant. I'm going to be a great leader. And there's a difference between being a great leader and being a great employer. And most people don't wake up thinking, I'm going to be a great employer today. They don't make that part of their identity. They assume it's covered in other aspects, but in reality, it's not. And so when you make that part of your identity, instead of saying, I'm doing enough as an employer, you're constantly thinking of, hey, what can I do better to be an employer? And so through the system, that profit acceleration software and the things I talk about in the strategies, the main one is called the market dominating position. And that is the entire basis of marketing. It's how do you separate yourself in your market so that you become essentially like a market of one, that you become the no-brainer solution for the people that you want to work with, that you're going to solve their issues, their hot buttons that they really have that you can uniquely solve. And by doing that with this framework, talking about not just focusing on one aspect, but making sure you cover all of them, because they're all interconnected. You know, in the recruiting stage, for example, when you talk about, hey, I'm going to interview somebody, you have to think about, okay, what are they actually signing up for? Okay, well, it's not just the job description. It's not just the benefits. It's not just the pay. It's not just providing what your business needs, because you actually have to think about, okay, what do I actually need them to do? How do I communicate that to them? What culture are they buying into? How am I going to prepare them for success? What's my entire onboarding system for 3 months? How am I going to think about feedback systems so that I understand where they are and how to use their feedback correctly? How do I make sure that they're so happy about being here that I don't even have to think about recruiting as hard, because they're such great employees. They have friends that want to join me that they refer to, and they talk about how to everybody they meet, how they should use us as a client base. And it comes from pulling all 6 of those pillars, because you've got to be prepared for all of it. I'm guessing the last time you went through an interview process, I know you were in corporate, so you even probably interviewed for some promotions, right? Yeah. So thinking about that, would you be more excited for the job interview where they're like, hey, so you kind of just ask some questions. You're kind of like at some place like, what is it like trying to get at with this question?
Yes.
And then you're like, okay, so where do you see the business in 5 years? And they're like, well, we kind of got this general idea. And I'm like, well, what's their training look like? How are you going to prepare me for success? And they're like, yeah, we're going to, we're relatively new. We're going to figure it out. And like, okay, where does, my progression look like in this company as you grow? Like, well, there's so much opportunity. You can just figure it out. Or are you going to be more excited about the places like, hey, we're going to grow, expecting to get to this place in 5 years. We're going to need this role, this role, and this role. And with what we're hiring you for, we probably see you go into this. We have expectations on how this is going to work and what you'd need to do to qualify for that next role. We're going to support you through this, give you feedback at these standpoints. And we've built this onboarding and early training system that we're confident is going to prepare you for success.
I'm taking plan 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things I talk about is like when you can confidently go into those conversations and you're like, I'm prepared for you or whoever to succeed in this role and to succeed in this business and to succeed in their dreams, you're going to attract better people. And then you're going to have a better team. You're going to have a better business. But when you don't, and you're constantly flying by the seat of your pants, and if you say this more than twice a day and it comes to your people, this is good enough, it's not good enough. And you got to entirely think your mindset on it, or hire a chief of staff or somebody that does care about the people, because that's not your strong point and you should farm that out.
Yeah, I love it when businesses have someone there that's an advocate for the employees. They may not get everything that they want for the employees, but at least there's somebody there fighting for them and then can get some of those things, approved for the employees. Mindset to me is huge. And I'm shocked at the number of employers out there who don't work with their team on mindset. You see either CEOs that have a great mindset, but they don't translate that down into their team, or you see they don't do any type of mindset training whatsoever. And, to me, mindset sets the stage for everything. I know whenever I wanted to be promoted, I had goals at a very young age, and had my manager brought me in and asked me, do you know what goal setting is all about? Do you know how to plan for your next steps? And I remember, him walking me through that process. I mean, here is mine to this day, February 6, 1991. I mean, I have them, I keep them right here. And I remember him telling me, look at them every day, every morning, every night, visualize them, put yourself in every one of those positions from now going forward. And when you reach one, you add a new one, So I remember that. And to me, that's all mindset. But, not every manager is like that. I had a thought that came to me while you were talking, and it's left me. It'll come back, but it all starts and ends, in my opinion, with mindset as to whether or not I'm going to make a decision to stay with you or leave you. So, there's so much that plays into that. And, how you treat people, how you go through that onboarding process. I remember when my first VA started with this job that I'm doing now, I scared her to death with what my goals were, what my growth goals were and where I wanted her to be, And if you don't work with your people to groom them into those places, again, you're setting your people up for a disaster. So, going back to, I want to go back. This is getting us totally off topic, but I'm so interested in this. How, when you were working with the accounting firm, and if you can't share this and tell me you can't share this, or maybe use another client or generically how you would handle it, fundamentally, how did you prepare the people at the top? If it wasn't directly the CEO, you had to start with somebody to get the CEO prepared, and to go from 10 to 50, that's phenomenal. But how did you start preparing the company? Because you were obviously an employee. How did you start preparing them for this massive change in the culture that you started?
Well, I think fortunately at the time, the culture was already there to be innovative and supportive, or at least that's what was purported to be. And so what I did was I spent a lot of my time not fixing the mindset, but fixing the skill set and the tool sets that they were using. So creating a lot of efficiencies. And that's when I worked with my clients, I would start with the mindset because that's always where that had to start. I mean, I wasn't hired into the accounting firm for that role of being the internal consultant. I just kind of did it. And to the degree,
good for you. You stepped up.
Yeah. So to the ability that I could, help encourage the better mindset and the leadership of the accounting firm, I did. But for the clients, is really just like, I want you to wake up every day and think about, I'm going to be a great employer. And when we're going through these items, these different specific tasks and tools and skill sets, consider applying that to it and just think about, okay, well, yeah, this is really great. How can I make this even better? And come to the meetings with me and be like, hey, I had this idea on how we could even do this even better. And that was what my aim was. And so the overall situation, I find, to come back to the meat of your question, is once you have somebody do that buy-in and then you really focus into what does that mean? You're familiar with objectives and key results, right? OKRs. So that mindset is like that objective. What are we aiming towards? And then giving those key results. And so here's some of those tools to do that. And so that could be that onboarding checklist. That would be those other things. When I was going through the process of that company, I was like, it's interesting because I was brought on to build that people advisory service. And in the time of me going through the interview process and then me starting that like 3 weeks, the other person that was in the official role I was joining left because I was supposed to pick up a bunch of our accounting clients as well, but over time. So I was supposed to start with like 5, 10, 15, pick them up. And instead that person left and I was just handed 150 people.
Wow.
Kind of on like, right after that first month of training. It's like, all right, here you go. They're also unhappy. Good luck.
Isn't that the way it always happens, though?
It really is. Unfortunately,
here's your plate. Untrained.
Yeah. Good luck. We believe in you, and great. And so, a lot of out of necessity, I just created so many efficiencies. We used this system called HubSpot. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Oh yeah.
And one thing that they do really well is their template system and their snippet system is really good. I've unfortunately not found other CRMs that have that system and just as effective. I'm looking, but I'll find it eventually. And so I just if I had to ever type something more than 3 times, bam, now it's a snippet. I just type 3 letters and I can send the exact same message to 150 people within 30 minutes if I need to. I could send out mass messages. And so they used to call me the snippet king, because I think across the company, even when we had 30 to 40 employees, there was something like 120 snippets, and I created 85 of them. So like
Amazing.
So just all these different ways to create efficiencies. Hey, in our interview process, I'm like, I don't know, why are these questions being asked? They're not actually obtaining information we need. So what I did was, in the interview process, like, okay, we need information across 4 categories. We need demographic information, we need behavioral information, and we need situational information, and we need technical information. So in these 2 interviews, 3 interviews, depending on how high level that role is, there'd be 2 versus 3 interviews. And we need to get this specific data. We need to ask these questions this specific way to get the right information so we can actually make good judgments. And I was like, granted that my second interview was with the person that left, so they didn't care, but I was like, why the heck was this person in this interview process? And so I was like, okay, we're going to have very specific people with very specific aspects of that role that they can provide insight into, that will then be able to, as a group, be able to make, informed decisions about whether this person's a good fit for the company or not. Just as one example. But clarity, repetition, structure are huge in all of those. And most smaller businesses just don't have that. It's also why I like to work with the businesses only up to really about 30 employees, because something I'm sure you've noticed is, every about 5 employees you gain from 0, you almost need a new structure. Like the interactions change, all the different functions change, and like the communication systems change. When I was started, it was 10 of us. There was essentially 1 manager and then a team lead and a couple other positions here and there. So I talked to the leader of the company at least once a week, usually 2, maybe 3 times a week. Then as we got to 50 employees and, they got people ahead of me, and, we started going from 2 tiers to like 2.5 tiers to like 4 or 5 tiers of employees, is an entirely different structure and different communication systems. And so that's about the time where I just don't have as much interest. I think once you're at that point, there's so many consultants that are like, and coaches that are like, I want to take care of the mid-market and attack that on. I'm like, great, but I want to help the people that need to even get there. The statistic I'm sure you've heard is either think of like 10% of small businesses, or 5% or 1%. I think it changes. So only fail in the first 5 years because they don't have the support they need. They can't afford it. And they are just kind of throwing things at a wall and hoping it sticks. So those are the ones I'm like, hey, I think you have a great personality. You have a great skill set, and even have at least the start of a good mindset, at least a growth mindset. And so we can help you to get where you actually want to go. And, knowing people you work with, I know you have a very similar practice where you're like, I know you're just starting, but I really think you have a lot to offer, and I'm going to help you get there so that you can start offering that to people. And people like you and me like that are essential for people succeeding.
Absolutely. And so, with you having the skill set of being able to identify those problem areas and being able to say, before you get too far down the line, let me start helping you fix those, which is what I'm really good at too. I worked in operations, I managed operations, and just being able to see those problem areas and being able to help fix those. But when you start talking about what you said about having, 2 to 3 layers, whether those layers are going up or they're going wide, the communications start dropping. I mean, you can have SOPs all day long, and SOPs, I believe in them 100%. I've created thousands of them. I've been on the approval team of them, the audit team of them. and have had to manage those that get the bad audits and the good audits. I've praised those that have gotten the good. But I think and I think that this is what you were alluding to, is that when the team is smaller, they're more apt to listen to you, and they're going to follow the policies, the procedures, the SOPs, the communication lines, so on and so forth. But when you start getting out past, like you say, maybe 50 employees or greater, and they've got more communication change that they have to follow, they're going to be like, well, yeah, I know that that's the SOP, but we think it works better for us out of this office or this region if we do it this way. And so they tweak that one thing. Well, then that becomes the norm for them. And then as they have turnover, well, I was taught to do it this way, so that's the way we do it out of this office, even though everybody else does it this way. That's when you just want to shoot yourself because it just becomes frustrating because they're not following what you as the leader set in place. And it becomes hard to manage then at that point, because there's many more people, as you mentioned, to try to handle and keep under control. But when there's fewer supervisors or managers or leaders, whatever you want to call them, it's that you bring into the room, it's a lot easier to keep them under control, if you will. But yeah, so important. And you're right. That's why I like doing the middle management or the middle-sized companies as well, and staying away from the big corporate, because it was always a frustration. They don't listen.
And I think, to your point, is because we've come back to feedback and how you run your business, and you're asking for feedback and you're actually doing something about it, which I think there's a lot of bigger businesses where they ask for feedback and then do nothing with it. And
that's what I was going to say. They don't listen.
Yeah. And that can be the people below that don't listen, but it's also the people above that don't listen. And it's harder to communicate. I think also when at those larger capacities, they stop explaining the why. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this is what it is, do what we tell you. And that's, I think, where that other office, for example, is like, well, this works better for us, because at no point did somebody from the head leadership say, we do this for this reason, and this is why this would work better if you apply it intentionally. And so without that more specific guidance that somehow got communication that got missed along the way, there's a lot of those. I remember at many different jobs, I worked in a corporate role for a while, and all the different papers you were supposed to sign when you first started, and you get 30 different documents that are somewhere between 2 and 20 pages. Nobody's reading all that. They don't care. They don't. And like, if you don't do like a regular, hey, by the way, guys, like, this is important for this reason, and like why you should know about this and should be reviewing it, or even early in the process on the onboarding, like I always recommend, hey, have people sign your employee handbook, and sign it. And then in that first day, run through it, at least the key parts, the things that are actually really important for them to know, and let them give them an opportunity to ask questions so they understand it. Because if you just say, hey, you signed this, you're supposed to read it, it's like, that has been the lie that every major corporation has been counting on forever. That's how with Disney, some guy got hurt at Disney World because he signed up for Disney Plus and signed some agreement, some 50-page agreement that he never read, was very badly damaged without any reparations. So I think coming into that assumption, and I know one person I talked to, he talks about over-explain, don't assume people understand what you hand them. Ask questions, ensure clarity, and make sure that they can repeat it to you if it's important. Otherwise, if they haven't repeated that back to you, you can't really get mad at them for not understanding it. You didn't make sure they did.
I know sometimes my husband gets frustrated with me because he'll say, I just sent you a document. I need you to sign it as quick as you can and send it back to so-and-so. And I'm like, I can't do that till tonight. And he's like, no, you have to do it within the next 5 minutes. And I'm like, I've got to get on a call in the next 5 minutes. And he's like, well, go ahead and sign it. You can review it tonight. And I don't like doing that because I am the person who reads all of the document so that I can make sure we are safe, and, I'll download an app and I'll start reading it. And I'm like, nope, delete this app because I'm not agreeing to that,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I am that person that's like, oh my gosh, she's going to sit here and read that whole thing before she signs it and leaves. Yep, I am, because I've worked at a place that knows those things are hidden in there, So, yeah, I'm the frustrated client.
As I say, can I give you a sentence that I give to my accounting clients all the time that's going to really frustrate your husband?
Yeah.
To say, your failure to plan accordingly does not constitute my emergency.
Yes. I want to say that, but oftentimes, he's getting the push on the other end. We did get a text.
Use that too.
Yeah. Yes. And we should use it more often. We did get a text today on an investment that we got an email on the 16th, and we're like, hey, are y'all not interested? And I was like, I haven't seen that email and I can't look at it till tonight. That's exactly what I said. I can't look at it till tonight. And so then he responded, and he said he'll take a look at it. But I'm sure I'll get a message before tonight that I need to do something with it. But yeah, those things, they don't set well with me because I like to look at them. But I am the why person, and I like to be the one to explain to my team and to the others the why of things. But I've also been in that position to have to explain and act like I agree with what's coming from the top when I didn't agree, but I had to, act like I did. And those times are hard, but that's what leadership's about sometimes. And man, it's not an easy position to be in. But again, it comes back to what I said at the beginning, is we have to make that decision. Are we going to stay and live in that, or are we going to go? And then it just finally got to where I decided this culture's changing and I can't stay in this any longer. I have to leave. And yeah.
By the way, what you were just talking about kind of made me think of a blog or some other, idea for you. Is like, Tonya's won't do apps, and I won't use these apps because such and such language. I think that'd be really interesting, even for whether your client base or for your connectivity program. I'm forgetting the name of that offhand. What's that called again?
Oh, the power connectors.
The power connectors. Yeah. It could be interesting for that. It's like, hey, you get access to this because these are all doing bad things with your data or too intrusive. Could be an interesting aspect for that.
Yeah. When I go to an app and they talk about how they're going to access certain things on your phone or whatever, I'm like, no, you are not. There's enough fraud that takes place. I don't need you entering into other things, And then, my granddaughter, for a long time, we made her get permission. She couldn't download an app without me approving it. And she's 14 years old, and she had to get permission before she could actually download it. And I would go in and I would review the apps and I would say, no, you can't have that app. She would get so mad because all of her friends had it. And it made her feel inferior and so on and so forth. And I would be like, there's safety reasons. And she would just think that was so crazy. And finally, she talked her dad into no longer having to have those approved. And so I don't approve them anymore. But I have to tell you, it makes me nervous because, she sees an app today. She just goes and downloads it. But I have, so I say, she doesn't have that much confidentiality things on her phone today. But as she gets older, she will. And what people don't understand for their kids and even for themselves, they don't read. They don't read what's there. They just go and do it. And they just download them with unawareness of the consequences of what they're doing. And that bothers me. But sometimes we can take that and put it into play for the workplace. If we don't explain to our staff the reasons why behind certain policies or procedures or operational guidelines or whatever, they have these mental thoughts like my granddaughter does about me, is I'm overly cautious or, trying to protect her or protect her data or whatever it is. It causes them to have negative feelings towards the company or the manager or the manager's manager or whatever if we're not forthcoming with information. And that was one thing that, I had most of my bosses, for the most part, were forthcoming. Now, we might not always like what was forthcoming, but they were forthcoming with information back to us. And I was always forthcoming with what I could, to my team, and wanted them to know, what was coming down the pike, whether they liked it or not. I had to always act like I liked it, but we were forthcoming pretty good with information. And then I always tried to explain the why. And I think when you do that, that creates the trust factor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious. When you were a child, were you also the one like me that was like, if you just told me to do something, I refused. Like, I was very anti-authoritarian, do what you're told, obey. But if there was like a remotely reasonable reason for why, I'm like, okay, sure, that makes sense. Like, I just needed to understand it. My mom, I had a conversation with her all the time. She'd be like, I just needed you to do what I told you to do. And it's like, I just needed you to tell me why.
Tell me why.
Sometimes I just needed you to not walk in front of a car in the road. And it's like, okay, but you're talking about 0.1% of these situations. Like, yes, in certain occasions that makes sense.
Yes.
That one instance is not the majority.
Yes. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, don't ask me why, just do it. You don't have to know the why for everything. There was a lot of reasons I needed to know the why. I still to this day want to know the why behind things. My dad used to say, I don't have to tell you the why. Just because I told you to do it, you need to do it. So, yeah. And that may be why I want to know the why so much today. I don't know. But yeah, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard, don't ask why, just do it.
Yeah, that's there's a whole other psychological conversation around that, but that's usually a power dynamic more than anything else, and insecurity. They're like, well, I don't have a good reason, so just do what I tell you. So that's a whole other hour-long conversation if we need to get into that.
Yeah, we can do that one on another podcast. But yeah, I did hear that a lot. One of the things, I'll just add this real quick because it's funny, but not funny. I used to could not. So when I was a teenager, I couldn't go out when it rained. My dad he always feared that I would have an accident in the rain. So I could not go out when it would rain. And I would say, but why? And he was like, don't ask why, you're just not going. It's raining and you're not going. And so, but it was because he feared that I would be in an accident and he didn't want to lose me. But we had lost other relatives in road accidents. And so, and because the road was slick, he didn't want me to be out. So if it was raining on a weekend, I wasn't going to town. So, but I always wanted to know why, so. But yeah, so I've got just a couple more questions here. I want to ask you about employees that you see in cultures, or if you're seeing them today. And I know there's cultures out there that are like this because I've had conversations with some. But when you see employees that are very well taken care of, mindset, pay, days off, those types of things. I know one of them's tenure, but what is the difference in that type of individual from their just overall day-to-day walk? What is different about those types of people? And do you think that those people are being hunted for, or do you think they're just content and afraid to ever leave where they are? Do you have an opinion about that?
So, to be sure I understand the question. So, we're talking about the employees that are doing well but aren't striving to go higher.
Well, maybe it could be either or. Maybe, I mean, they could be striving to go higher, and maybe their employer might take them to go higher. But I'm just curious on their day-to-day walk, on their job, them personally. Do you think those are content type people? I have a tendency to think that they probably are, but I'm just curious if those people are people that are being sought after, and maybe do those people look for other jobs, or are they just content where they are and don't ever want to leave because they feel taken care of?
So,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I think I understand a bit better now. What I'll say is I think there's some tensions. And so there's good tensions and there's bad tensions. And so there's the good tension where this perception of loyalty comes in. And if you're being taken care of, you might be more content with your employer. And so, for example, if they're taking care of you, helping to align your goals and dreams with their goals and dreams, and they're considering you, they're taking care of not just the emotional safe or taking care of emotional safety, but also, and if we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got the structural needs, the safety needs. And if you're already helping to take care of a number of those, they're less likely to be looking. Now, they might still be headhunted by others, but when you're being taken care of, there's that tension of, if I were to move to this other company, there's uncertainty there. And it's like, hey, maybe it's better pay. Maybe there's more going on. But the difference between the comfort that you have in your current role the opportunity has to exceed that comfort and that knowledge. And so they might be getting headhunted. I would highly recommend they are looking at other opportunities. Work isn't vastly dissimilar from dating. And until you're in a married position, it's good to have downward comparisons. You talk about people that they break up and they're like, oh, well, I got back into the dating pool and realized how terrible the dating pool is and went back into that relationship. For example. And so having those comparison points, at least being aware of them, is, I think, generally good. And again, I'm not going to say once you're in a committed relationship to be looking around, but having conversations with people that are dating, having conversations with people that are looking and having those experiences, and just being aware of what's out there, and helps you appreciate where you are or realize where you are isn't good. Because if you're not being taken care of well, then it's an entirely different story. If you're going in one company and they're not treated well, but you're getting paid well, there's a lot of those people. And as soon as somebody comes in like, hey, we're going to pay you the same amount, but you're going to be in a much better situation. We actually take care of our employees better, especially at a lot of startups are very successful at pulling people out of corporate roles where they're just another cog in the machine, and they can go be, a lot more important and a lot more considered. Their opinions hold more weight. And so that's usually a very easy one when you go from high pay, low importance to same pay or even lower pay. I know a lot of people that took pay cuts because they wanted to have a higher impact and be more involved. And so I'm not 100% sure if that answered your question, but
it does.
Because it's in that, and that would always be what I recommend as an employer. Is your goal is not to do everything you can because you expect them to be loyal. I don't actually agree with loyalty as a concept the way it's used. I think just like, again, and in relationships, you should always be dating your partner, always be showing up to be your best, always making an improvement for the other person. And it's more likely they'll do the same. So, there's this saying out there is, oh, what if I train them and they leave? And the other person says, what if you don't and they stay? Do you want people that you can lift and then because you've lifted them, others know to come into your business? When working with State Farm agents, they have what's called aspirants. And so once you've had one other person that's gone through your office and as an aspirant to become another agent, other people start hearing that and they're like, oh, if I would become an agent, he's going to train me really well. And so you get a pipeline of the top candidates that come through, because even though they're going to go end up doing their own agency and not working for you directly and being your top performer, they're going to spend 3 to 4 years being your top performer. And more people are going to come in that want to really see success come in there. And so if you're more focused on building people to be the best version of themselves, even if they leave, they can become big support through other businesses, through other people they refer in. And you now have a reputation that the top people are going to want to work with you because you are more concerned about building them than you are about yourself.
Yeah. So you've given some really great feedback to answer that question. And I love the way that you answered it, because I had actually had a scenario in my mind, but I didn't want to give you too much information because I wanted to see how you answered it. So I have a friend who was in a position, got a great raise, very happy, very, very, very happy, and not looking to leave, loved her job. And I don't think she would have ever left, honestly. And then she was approached. Well, let me back up one step. Got a great raise, big raise. But then after that, they raised sales targets. Okay. So then the raise doesn't look as attractive. Okay. So this goes back to what we talked about early on in the podcast. And so, but still, she loved her job and had been there a while and always beating, her monthly goals. And so then she was approached, and again, very happy, very content, not looking, but she listened, then realized that things weren't as great as what she thought they were. After listening, she ended up moving and got everything in writing that was promised to her, got everything in writing, which I think you always should do, because I've seen situations where promises are made and then they don't follow through, especially when it sounds too good. But, got everything in writing and everything went really well. But I've also been on the other side where people think they have it so well, they don't listen. But my point to all of this is never be so content that you don't listen. If you've not hit the subscribe button, I highly recommend that you go ahead and do that now. Let us know what you liked about the podcast. Say, Tonya, I love this podcast. This was great feedback. If you've not already joined the Power Connectors, I would like for you to do that now. It's www.thepowerconnectors.org. And until next week, keep doing those smart connections, building big growth, and don't burn out. I'll see you again next week. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Influence and Growth Mastery podcast. If you're ready to attract high-ticket leads, scale with AI, and grow through powerful referral networks, visit my website, gossageconsulting.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with any CEO who is ready to simplify, scale, and succeed without the burnout. Until next time, stay influential and keep building smart connections that drive the real growth. See you soon.